Welcome to the Money Over 50 podcast, brought to you by Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue from Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. This information is general in nature and does not take into account your objectives, financial situation, or needs. Therefore, you should consider whether the information is appropriate for you and your personal circumstances. If you require personal advice, please contact Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. Here are your hosts, Dallas Davison and Michael Hogue.
Welcome to Money Over 50 with Dallas and Michael. Dallas, interesting title today.
Thanks, Michael.
How to save retirement without money.
Thanks, Michael. I feel like this is one of those like Zen koans they talk about, where it's like the sound of one hand clapping or those sorts of things. So.
Have you invented the magic bullet, have you?
I thought this is a very clickbaity title where people would go, geez, heck, what's this? No money, easy. No, so the concept here, as is often the case with these sorts of podcasts, where I have a harebrained scheme and then flesh it out much more. But there's a family friend of ours and a good friend of mine that you would well know, named Harry. And we've talked before about Harry. And Harry is he's the sort of guy that, and we've talked literally about this before, where Harry doesn't need money. And there's a couple of reasons for this. So for a lot of people, when we talk about saving for retirement, getting set up for retirement, it's all about, I guess, looking inwards and going, how do I have enough in my super or in my partner's super, or have this paid off, or have this asset, or have the new car bought, or have the house done up, or whatever it is they do. Harry, I would say, is almost a throwback to a bygone era where, number one, there are two things that people like Harry do that he will never starve in retirement, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, he can turn his hand to anything, so he's the most capable man in the world. He's done everything, been everywhere, seen everything, and bought the T-shirt. And number two is he's the most helpful man in the world. So all of his life is about his, doing things for his family, but also for his extended family, which is what he considers his friends to be. So we've talked about this before, where Harry doesn't really have to think about retirement because, number one, he doesn't really ever want to retire if that means not doing capable, useful things, and if that means not helping out his family. So we've said this before, where Harry's the sort of guy where, regardless of what happens to him financially in future, he will always have a place to go. There's 1,000 people throughout Queensland that if Harry didn't have somewhere to live or food to eat, they'd take him in, give him a spare room somewhere, set a plate for him at the table, all those kinds of things. So the point I wanted to make here today is not that, like I say, it is a throwback to a bygone era, because that is kind of how people did save for retirement in the past. Is you basically built up a stockpile of ways to be useful and helpful to people around you. And then you focused your energy on, how do I be a helpful, contributing member of my society at large and within my group of friends and family. And you sort of just trusted in the universe that will come back around, and that I'll help people and I'll take care of people while I'm able to, and then they will take care of me if ever there comes a time where I don't. And I think the point that's really interesting with this is that it's not as though this is a tactic or a strategy that people use consciously. If they did, it would be sniffed out and it would come across as very transactional and sort of unhealthy. But I guess the point I sort of want to make, and I don't really know what it is, as I never do with these sorts of concepts, is that we spend a lot of time thinking about how to save for retirement, as in how to put aside enough money. Another way to think of that, and I think these things can work in together, is how can I be the sort of person, how can I be the sort of member of my society and friends and family that when things are hard, or if things happen to me, I'll be this, because of all the help and because of all the things that I've done, and because I'm capable and useful and able to do all these different things, I'll always have a place to go and people to take care of me. Does any of that make any sense at all?
Yeah, look, it does. I must admit, I was wondering what the point was going to be when up until about a minute ago. But no, I like it. So you're right. In Western civilization, we talk more about the
Still very
the nuts
individualistic.
and bolts
Yeah.
of having enough
Yeah.
money equity,
Yeah.
and compare that to third world countries, for example, where they have relationship equity,
Yep.
which is what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm struggling for the word here, but yeah, it's I guess relationship equity and equity that they build up
Yeah.
around them with family members and things like that.
Yep.
So I can see. So in Australia, you can have both effectively.
And that's I guess the point. We can kind of have the best of both worlds. We've got in a lot of those countries they don't really have number one, they don't really have a functioning financial system and a retirement savings scheme. You can have the best of both worlds here.
Yeah.
You can go, I'm going to save for my retirement, and I'm going to get the money stacked up into a super fund that I can draw down, and I can do all that. But I think the way that I think about this with building up the relationship equity is that, like we said, no one really goes into it thinking that, and it's just an interesting thing when you start to look at things that people do, particularly leading up to and throughout their retirement. There are a lot of actions that people take and things that they do to fill their time that they're not doing it thinking, I'm going to build up a stockpile of goodwill here that I can draw down on in hard times. But
it may be the wrong use of adjective that I use there. What you were saying, there's transferability with Harry. And I know Harry.
Yeah.
They broke the mold when they made Harry. So Harry's worked hard his whole life. He's been a shearer.
Yeah.
And so Harry will never stop working.
Yes.
Until the day he dies. What will happen though? His hard work transfers somewhat.
Yes.
I remember you speaking about your grandfather as well.
Yeah.
So that like your grandfather, I don't know much about him. I had met him, but he would have worked really hard as a young man.
Yes.
And in the later years,
Yep.
he couldn't work physically as hard, but he still worked.
Yes. And that's I think
and we see that to an extent now. It takes a village to raise a child, and what we see a lot of now is grandparents helping out with grandkids and things like that. So it's really transferability.
Yes.
Because the notion is, in the handbook, the notion is you retirement's a black and white thing. So you work full time, the light is on, and then you switch the light off at 65, and then you enter into a period of retirement, and you're retired full time. What you're really talking, and of course you have to fund that retirement somehow. So you need the nuts and bolts of the money in accounts and so forth, and the planning around that. In addition to that, to remain fulfilled and happy, you have to be involved.
Yeah, you have to feel like your life has some meaning. And this was sort of what made me think of this is that, like anything in life, if we think purely of ourselves and what me, and what's best for me, that can be a useful way of thinking about what makes us happy and what. But if we're thinking purely about ourselves and what's best for us and nothing for anyone else around us, it tends to lend itself to a life that sort of lacks a bit of meaning or a bit of purpose or a bit of those sorts of things. And this is what I find with people like that, like with my grandparents and with Harry and these sorts of people, is that they're never sitting there in their 70s going, oh, what's the point of it all? Because they are not only are they being useful to other people and helping other people, which is helpful for them if ever they fall on hard times, but it's also useful for themselves because they've got a reason to get out of bed. They do still, not only do they feel like they're an active contributing member of society, but they don't have those, those moments of, meaninglessness or purposelessness. Well, what am I going to do this week? I'll sit here and watch TV all week, and what's the point of it all? Because they've got things to go and fill their time with that are very meaningful to them, and they're, it's one of those things where you think if you think about how to plan your retirement, it's not to say that you should live your whole retirement thinking only about everyone else around you and trying to be, and being an unpaid babysitter and, being unpaid labour for other people around you, or that you should be a martyr and not think about what makes you happy. But it's just an interesting one that you tend to see that people who do enjoy a meaningful and active and happy retirement, there does tend to be some thought of, okay, what are some causes, even if it's not a help your friends and family, what are some causes or some things that I feel, that I feel passionate about or excited about? You have people who go and volunteer and help the elderly, and then you'll have people who go and volunteer to read books to school kids who don't have, all these sorts of things. And that was, I think, the interesting thing is if you look at both from a nuts and bolts retirement planning point of view, it makes sense to build up a store of goodwill, and most people aren't doing it with that in mind, but it is actually a kind of a useful, from a purely economic point of view, it is a useful strategy to be someone that people want to help out. But then just from what's going to make me happy and what's going to lead to a good retirement for me, it helps in that way as well.
I watched a documentary one time and I just stumbled across it, and it was on longevity.
Yeah.
And it also tied in diet as well. And there's a village that they showcased in Italy, and it's in the mountains. So in the mountainous region, I forget exactly where it is, but it's effectively cut off from, it's hard to get up there into this area.
Yeah.
So it's effectively cut off from civilization.
Yeah.
And they polled the happiness levels and also the longevity.
Yeah.
And there's a huge spike.
Yes.
And it's almost like everyone lives to 100 in this village.
Yeah.
And what they looked at, no one actually retires.
Yeah.
So if you're a cabinet maker in this village, you're cabinet making at age 90 now. You mightn't be.
You might be sitting on a stool on the corner telling the young guy, here, grab that bit of wood and go and stand over here and do this and do that.
Yeah. If you're a plumber, you keep working because they just don't have they don't have the pool of workers.
Yeah.
Everyone grows their own food.
Yeah.
They drink every single day.
I heard you tell this story before. I think that's the main bit for you.
I was amazed.
They drink wine all the time. Right, that'll do me.
Well, they eat rich food and they drink wine, and it was. I mean, the actual documentary said this is amazing because what we thought was bad for people in terms, because the actual show was on diet. It was on diet, and it's not that they had an unhealthy diet.
No.
It was all homegrown, but a lot of pasta, a lot of wine.
Yeah,
they make their own wine, and it was seemingly like everyone lived to a very, very old age, about 100, and they were a bit perplexed.
Yeah.
The people that were doing this documentary and the medical authorities, and they all they could put it down to was there's so many I guess inherent health qualities in actually staying active
yes,
and actually being everyone's an important member of that of that society because you seemingly you never retire. Now you're not doing 40-hour weeks or 50-hour weeks, but you're involved.
Yeah.
So you remain an important and integral member of that society.
That's exactly right, and I think that's, to me, like I say, we're in a fantastic position in Australia where we get to pick and choose from, as a relatively new culture, we kind of get to pick what is, how we choose to live the pathways of our life, if that makes sense. So you're not going, okay, well, this is what people have been doing in this area for 3,000 years, so this is how I'm going to live my life. We get to look around the world and go, what are some of the things that I do like? And like I say, no one's more individualistic and contrarian than me. So I like the idea of having my retirement savings going, okay, I'm not beholden to anyone. No one's beholden to me. I don't have to try and be nice to people I don't want to because I'm sort of reliant on them for a morsel of food or anything like that. I'm not saying we should move to an economy where we get rid of money or anything like that. It's just interesting that I think you can tie those things in together and go, right, well, my job as a person in the peak of their working life is to raise kids, save some money for my retirement so that I can be self-funded and not have to be reliant on anyone at those times. But then it's almost a crossover where you go, okay, that's taken care of. I know I don't need to help people for the sake of, so that they'll take pity on me or anything like that. But by doing that, by helping other people, by thinking about how I can remain an active and contributing member of society, I think people like Harry have sort of stumbled across a secret of a successful and meaningful and happy retirement by thinking in terms of, yes, how can I be happy, but also how can I help and make the people around me happy and want them to succeed and thrive as well. So it's something I think about where, because we talk about this with people leading up to retirement, where you go, what do you want to do in retirement? And I think without meaning to, we focus, and our modern society focus the question on, do you like playing golf? Right, I play golf 5 days a day, 5 days a week. Do you like fishing? Right, I go fishing all the time. We don't sort of think, hey, what are your skills and what are the things that you're uniquely capable of that you can continue to share with the world in a way that doesn't involve you necessarily out there swinging a hammer in the hot sun or something like that, but how can you remain an active and contributing member rather than get sort of shoved off to the side and not be able to share that knowledge and that experience with anyone and sort of drift into a sense of purposelessness and meaninglessness in what am I going to do for the next 30 years. So it's a very odd podcast probably to have on a podcast about how to save for retirement, but it's just, I think, a different way of thinking about planning for your retirement. As you say, the relationship equity of, the nuts and bolts of how can I be the sort of person that other people want to help and that can continue to contribute, and then also how can I do that in a way that adds meaning to my own retirement.
Glad we found an end to that film. The conclusion. So at the start, there was a beginning.
There's just an idea that we just roll.
I was fearful it might be like your typical SBS world movie where there's a beginning and middle but no end.
It just drifts off. The camera pans to like a window with a curtain blowing across it, and that's it. So no, I think that's I'm glad that as my foil here, you've been able to draw out of me what I actually was thinking and what actually meant here when I said how to save for retirement without using money.
Thanks for listening. And if you can remember to please fill up those 5 empty stars if you haven't done so already, and give us a rating on iTunes. We want to share the Money Over 50 podcast with more people, so that would help. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Money Over 50 podcast with Money Over 50 Financial Advisors. We look forward to catching up again soon.